Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's regular August board meeting of the Vestavia Hills Board of Education. This meeting will also include our first budget hearing. So our first order of business is to approve the amended agenda, which is displayed on the screen. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So now I'll call the budget hearing to order and turn it over to our CSFO, Greg Maynard, to present the 2017-18 proposed budget.
Thank you all for being here tonight for the first of our two public budget hearings. This is our 17th annual one, and it will be just like the other 16, boring, so I'll just go ahead and warn you. We've got two documents that we have out on the table over there, plus public comment forms. This document is actually the required public budget hearing document that's specified by the state. Inside the front cover on this page is the actual guidelines from the state for what is to be reported and the reports and forms that are to be used to report that information. We are not going to go through that page by page because it is very long and very tedious. What we do have, as we've done in the past, there's a PowerPoint presentation. This will be posted on the website tomorrow. The actual public budget hearing document is already on the website now. It's been out there since yesterday, I think it was. Having said all that, we'll get started. And this is a brief overview that just goes through and explains that our fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. The information that's in this document has been gathered, revenue sources has been gathered from state allocations, federal grants, information from the city dealing with local revenues. We've also consulted with the directors, the principals, the staff at the schools to have input on what they think their expenditures are going to be for this year. We try to look at this in a conservative manner, meaning that we tend to underestimate what our revenues are going to be, and we tend to go a little bit higher on what we think the actual expenses are. Hopefully we'll fall somewhere in a good range and come out with a positive balance at the end of the year. This is the form that starts off everything when we start working on the budget. This is our allocation sheet from the State Department of Education. This is the foundation program funding sheet. It sets out how much state funding from the foundation program we're going to receive in the 2018 fiscal year. Goes through, and at the top you'll see a section that has system ADM 7,100. That's what our ADM was last year after the first 20 days after Labor Day. That number from the prior year determines our funding for this year. I can already tell you that this year, as of today, enrollment's 7,178. Since we are up a fair amount compared to where we were last year, there is a possibility that the state will make some additional funds available to us in January. It's called current unit money. We don't know if it'll be available, so we do not budget it at this time. It becomes budgeted when it's available. Next section shows teachers, principals, assistant principals, etc. And there's a listing for 2018 and 2017. The 2018 is, those are the units that are actually, we actually receive funding from the state for this fiscal year that we will be starting. The way they determine this, they take our personnel report that we file October 15th. They put it into the foundation funding program. They look at the divisors that they use for the different classrooms. They look at the salaries that we're reporting. They look at the salaries that are actually on the state salary matrix. And when they run the calculations, this is what they come up with for the number of units that they're going to fund for us. It's up by 12.68 units, which is great. But for this year, we've actually added 24 brand new units that we have not had in the past. And that 24 new units is about $1.7 million. That includes salaries and benefits. Get down foundation program calculation, they calculate salaries, 22 million, fringe benefits, 9 million. That's health insurance, retirement, basically, and FICA for those state-funded units. Other current expense is kind of a nebulous term they use for how they try to help fund our support units. There's not an actual breakdown on how much it is per unit, but they do go through and look at how many units, support units we have that are reported on the LEAPS report that are paid out of the foundation program, and they calculate that amount of money for us to use. Now, we don't specifically have to use it on salaries. It can be used for anything that foundation program dollars can be used for. State fiscal stabilization, we haven't had that in quite a few years. We do receive CIS funds, or classroom instructional support funds. These are monies that are allocated by the legislature every year when they act, and it varies from year to year as to what it will be and what they will actually be funding. Classroom instructional materials and supplies, $421.51 this year. I think it was $411 last year. Technology, $211.51 per instructional unit. Library enhancement, $30.44 per unit. Buy a lot of books with that. Professional development, $77.55 per unit. And then there's a category called common purchase, which has not been funded in probably 6-7 years. It was originally allocation put out there for the schools to go through and vote, where they could go through and buy school-wide purchases, or make school-wide purchases that would be used by all the teachers. Like I said, that hasn't been funded in a while. And then textbooks are $54.52 per ADM. Total foundation program, just over $40 million, which is up $1.3 million over the previous year, which is, we always like to have a good increase. Breaking it down a little bit further, the different parts of the foundation program, what comes out of the Education Trust Fund is $33.9 million. Then they go through and fund specific programs. School nurses, $278. High Hopes, we no longer receive. The 1% Salary Act, we no longer receive. Technology Coordinator, $42,000. Transportation operating allowance, $216,000, which is actually down about 10% over what it was in the previous year. We were told that transportation funds were cut across the board, and that was just our percentage of it, was the 10%. Fleet renewal, $25,374. That's based on the number of buses that we have that are less than 10 years old. We get about $5,000 per year, with the idea being in 10 years we should have enough money to buy a bus with that. Last buses we bought were in the $90,000 range, so they come nowhere near funding what the actual bus costs are, but it does help. Capital purchase, this is designated for construction, repairs, maintenance, those type things. We do not use any of that to pay any salaries. It is strictly used for maintenance on our school buildings. At-risk funding, $63,000, that's up slightly. Career Tech O&M, $13,893, down some. Total state funds, $36,000. To be able to participate and receive that $36,000 in funding, there is a 10 mil match that has been in effect since the foundation program has been in existence. And basically, all school systems have to contribute the value of 10 mils of what their local ad valorem tax is. Here, local ad valorem tax, 1 mil brings in about $640,000, so our contribution is $6,412,000. There's also a match required for the capital purchase funds, that $1,665,000 that we receive. And that's about a $555,000 match. So to participate and receive those funds, we're actually having to put up $6.9 million of our own dollars. And that's statewide, it's not just us. All right, we're going to specifically focus in on the general fund budget. We receive federal funding for IDEA, Title II, Title III. Child Nutrition Program receives federal funding also through the USDA. All those programs have very stringent applications that have to be filled out. There are very few categories that we really have any choice over how those funds are spent. So the board does not truly exercise much discretion in how the federal funds are spent. So that's why we're going to spend more time on the general fund. That's where the board's spending discretion is. Okay, and I'm not going to dwell on this a whole lot. I mean, I won't go into great detail on any of that. This whole thing, if you print it out, it's about 498 pages. So we tend to do it, you know, more by general categories. State and local revenues, foundation program, $33.9 million. Then we have nurses, career tech O&M, tech coordinator, transportation operations, at-risk preschool, Alabama Reading Initiative, which actually comes out to 40 some odd, right at $50,000 for us to fund 4 reading coaches, which does not, I mean, it takes care of about 2/3 of what their salaries and benefits are. The rest of it is picked up by the board from the general fund. Gifted ed, $23,000, state ESL, $13,000. Local ad valorem from all the different sources, the 10.5 mil, 15.1, 3.15, 8.2, comes in at about $34,907, $907,000. We have extremely good ad valorem rate. We have extremely good support from the community. It allows the school system to do the things it does. And I'll point out one thing in talking about the new units we have. Besides the 24 new units that we've hired this year, the board also has in total 96 locally funded units. And that's unheard of for some boards of education to even have one locally funded unit. Years ago, fairly large school system to our west, I was talking to their CSFO, they had no money at all for any locally funded units. They had to go with just what the state allocation was. And I cannot imagine trying to have the class divisors where they need to be and meet the needs on that tight of a budget. Sales tax revenue, anticipate maybe $300,000 in that. Medicaid Administrative Outreach Program, that's a program that's run through the state of Alabama where we get reimbursed for Medicaid eligible services that we provide to students, $275,000. Out of district tuition, $36,000. And other is miscellaneous donations or assorted grants that we may receive during the year. On expenditures, instructional services, $43,500,000. That's our largest item, and as it should be, that's what we're in the business of, is instructing students. Instructional support, $10 million. Operations and maintenance, $6.4 million. Auxiliary services, and auxiliary services is basically our transportation operation that we run, 344. General administrative services, $4.3 million. Debt service, $3.3 million. And other expenditures, which is just a lot of different small miscellaneous items that are totaled up in that one amount. Underneath that, you see a category, other fund sources and uses. Other fund sources are revenues that come into the board, and they're basically transfers from the local schools, and that is where the local schools reimburses the board for the cost of transportation for extracurricular activities or field trips. And that is required by law that they reimburse us for mileage and the cost of the bus driver. I will say the good thing is the mileage reimbursement goes into a special revenue account, and we can use that to pay for anything that's transportation related. These last two buses that were on the agenda that we had bid out, that's where most of the funding is coming from to pay for those buses. Let's see, other fund uses. That is transfers out, which involves the money that we pass through to the child nutrition program. Also includes the $115 per student that we send to the local schools to help them operate their campuses. Also includes the CIS funds that we have to pass through.
Hey Greg, under ad valorem, I know ad valorem's been trending upward along with sales tax. Is the 34,907, is that based on last year, or does that include a trending? Or
it includes a slight trending based on where we are right now. And I'll go ahead and tell you, as of today, we are actually just a hair over $1 million above what we had projected to budget for the 2017 fiscal year.
So things keep going like they're going, there'll be favorability there for us.
Yeah, but some of this is based on commercial developments that started about 2 years ago. They have finally started hitting the tax rolls due to the way the timing is. So those assessed at 20%, those are what have come on right now. And I don't know what the current picture is for any new developments that are going on, but this could stabilize. I don't necessarily see it as a constant trend.
Okay.
But we did factor that in this budget, and that's why that figure's, higher than what we had for the current year we're under. And if everything works like we hope it will, we will end up being able to add to the reserve by just over $1 million at the end of 2018. Okay, this slide is a budget comparison slide between the 2018 budget and the 2017 budget, and it just goes over what some of the differences are. Like on revenues, increased ad valorem is why we're up there. Instructional services, that's those 24 new positions that we've added. Instructional support, we're going to have some increase in salary and benefit amounts every year due to step raises that employees earn. So there will always be an incremental increase even without a board-funded raise or a state-funded raise, just because people progress up the salary schedule. Operations and maintenance, almost level. Auxiliary services, it's actually a little bit of change because actual costs were below budget for 2017, so we have reflected that in the 2018 budget. Administration, $711,000 increase. We actually went through and $711,000 decrease. During this year, we actually replaced all the teacher laptops at a cost of $740,000, so that will not be figuring into next year's budget. Debt service is level. Other just additional miscellaneous expenses, transfers are almost identical. So the overall net change in the two budgets is about $272,000.
Greg, in operations and maintenance, is the Berry property, is that rolled under there?
It's not coming out of the general fund, that comes out of the capital outlay fund. So, and that's what we're about to address right here. Total state funds from for the current year that we're receiving, $2.2 million. That's the $1.6 million from the state from the foundation program, plus our $555,000 match puts us at 2.2. We have approximately $44 million left in the bond funds. That we've only done 2 draws on that, and one was for the purchase of Berry, and the other one was to reimburse the board for the purchase of the Cahaba Heights property. So we really have not made any draws yet on that, but the day is rapidly approaching when we will be pulling that money down as the construction projects ramp up. We have, in the past, the state has gone through and allowed boards of education to leverage part of their state capital outlay money. And by leverage, it's just a fancy term for a loan. It's basically if you forego X dollars of your state capital outlay money, that $2.2 million, we will go through and give you X number of dollars and you will pay it off for 30 years. And we have done that 3 times in the past. It's a very easy way to get funding. You don't have to have bond counsel. You don't have to sell bonds. You don't have to do any of that. You just sign on the dotted line and you're committed. But we still have these amounts that we're paying back right now: a 2002 issue, a 2009, and a 2013. So when you net it all out, current year bond funds available, $45.4 million. Coming in the upcoming fiscal year 2018, estimating, and I will stress estimating, construction cost of about $38.8 million. This is when we will be working on Berry, the West Kitchen and Cafeteria, possibly some additional classrooms, Cahaba Heights, classrooms additions, and right now I'm not quite sure when some of those projects are going to take off or what the billing is going to be, but somewhere about $38.8 million. Having said all that, that still leaves us just a little over $6.6 million in uncommitted bond funds. And I will remind everybody that when we undertook the capital outlay projects that we have now, it was anticipated we would spend all the bond funds and somewhere between 15 to 17 million of general fund reserves to complete all these projects. So that's where we are at the moment. Okay, here's just brighten it up a little bit. Bar graph, and basically this is showing salaries and benefits by category. That gray bar over at the end is other expenditures from all those other different categories, and the other expenditures include purchase services, debt service, transfers out. One thing I can say that is good, in spite of the additional locally funded units we have and the additional 24 units that we're hiring this year, our salaries and benefits run about 82% of our budget. That's a good number. Anywhere from 80 to 82% is where a school system should be. When you start getting over 85%, you can have issues coming up, because that leaves you 15% or less to cover any other expenses of the system. Utilities, construction, repairs, you're kind of getting top heavy, but we're at a good place right now. Little pie chart, expenditures by type. The biggest part is, instructional services. Next biggest, orange, instructional support, which is how it should be. Instruction is where we should be directing all of our funds. And then it tapers off from there, debt service, general administration, other, and then our transfers in and out, and our debt service. Another little pie chart. Believe it or not, there up at the top there is a very tiny little sliver between the two big colors, and that's our transfers. But most of our revenue comes from local sources, rest is state sources. And I will point out on our federal sources, we do receive about $1.3 million total in federal funding. Most of that is for the IDEA Part B special education program. We also receive Title II funding, Title III funding, and federal career tech funding, which is referred to as Perkins money. Carl Perkins, not the blue suede shoes, Carl Perkins, but anyway.
Are there any questions from the board? All right. If there are any questions from the public, there are comment forms on the table over here, and if you could fill one of those out, please, and leave it with the central office. We'll research that, and then the next budget hearing will be on August 30th. Thank you, Mr. Maynor. All right, we'll now move back to our regular meeting agenda and begin with the approval of the minutes of the July 19th meeting that have been distributed. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections to these minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We also need to approve the minutes of the July 31st meeting that have been distributed. Do I hear a motion to approve those?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections to those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll now turn the meeting over to Dr. Phillips for administrative reports.
All right, I have one recognition. Mr. Hernandez, come on up here. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Throughout the year, you all know that we recognize many students for their accomplishments. Come on, come. Students and teachers that do extraordinary things. We have opportunities to recognize the PTO, we have opportunities to recognize the foundation, our business partners, and many others. And there are so many. We've talked many times about the fact that we would not be able to do what we do without the support of our parents and the work that goes on in the school district through these various avenues or just individually. And what I have found, and I would have been remiss if I hadn't taken this opportunity, is that often I would get comments to me, you have any idea how much Frank Hernandez does for us? Do you know? He does such a great job. Or we'll be in the same location and somebody will say something about the work that he does. For those of you that do not know, and I'm going to miss some of the things you do, but the biggest thing he does is, that I know about, among other things, is that he has, if I said single-handedly, that would be an exaggeration and I might offend some other parents who work hard alongside him. However, he is the brain trust behind the concessions, the support of our athletic events and other programs on our campuses, particularly for the high school band. And the work that he does, he gets recognized, I am certain, at band banquets when everybody's doing the chicken finger circuit and things of that sort. But he just goes so far above and beyond, from coming in and meeting with Greg and saying, I want to make sure that we're doing this right and I have questions about this, to just reorganizing and understanding of the processes. So it's really timely that as Greg has presented the budget hearing, and we're talking about finances, you know, we are questioned often and have been and should be about checking crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure that we're using our resources wisely. And this is just another example. Mr. Hernandez and the work that he does for us, and I just didn't want to not take the opportunity to recognize the work that he does. It captures why this school system is able to accomplish what it does, and the work behind the scenes that often is not recognized in a public forum. His attention to detail, just the things that he does on behalf of our schools, not only the high school band, but the way that it trickles to other schools and other events and other teams and benefits our other programs within the school system, and we wouldn't be able to do this work without him. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize him for that. And the other thing that I feel is necessary to say is that the personal encouragement that he has given to a perfect stranger, me, anytime I have seen him, I'll never forget coming to the Liberty Park middle school girls game when they were battling their hearts out for championship play. And he took the moment to come down and just thank me for what I did. And I'm thanking me for what I did. It's my JOB. Thank you for what you do. But just that personal encouragement. And I just wanted to take a moment before I stepped away to thank you for the work that you do. Thank you. As you all are aware, we have, last year, we reworked, I can't even say revamped because we absolutely, a group of people totally reworked the evaluation system that we use with our administrators and with our teachers, which was much needed as the state gave us the autonomy to move away from Educate Alabama and do that. The other piece of that, of course, is making certain that the way that we evaluate our classified employees is also has been shored up, and we have done that. And I have not done that, but a team of great folks have helped us with that. So I've asked Mike Donaldson to present that to you all this evening, just so you are aware that this piece that has been important to us is posted and there.
Why is mine the only name up there? Did you think I was going to duck out on this presentation?
That's up to Pat.
Okay. Well,
I leave that to her.
Just questioning my commitment there. But as Dr. Phillips said, the classified employee evaluation is our last component, actually our fourth component. The order of those went with the teacher evaluation system, the local school administrators evaluation system, and the certified district personnel. And we tried our best, we did these together, and we tried our best to keep some consistency and continuity between those processes. And I'm just going to tell you, the classified process made that somewhat difficult, because when you look at it in terms of teachers, you've got a group of teachers. Administrators, you've got a group of administrators. But when you're talking about classified personnel, you're talking about such a diverse skill set and jobs, from secretaries to aides to custodial to bookkeepers, you name it. It's all across the spectrum. So what we had to do, we had to try to find a system where it would be applicable to all folks within that group. But yet at the same time, we wanted it to be specific enough that they could benefit from the information that we're going to gain from this. So we started out, the evaluation process is going to evaluate the following skills. That's job knowledge, initiative, adaptability, dependability, cooperation, safety, attendance, and quality of work. And board members, you have two documents in front of you. I think you actually have the evaluation instrument, and if you'll notice that under each one of those categories, we put more specific and defined indicators to help us know whether those, how those categories are actually being performed. And this is an overview, so this will be brief. To start with, the evaluation cycle is just like all of the others, where employees probationary employees, non-tenured, will be evaluated each year. On full evaluation, they'll go through all the components of the system. Tenured and non-probationary employees, they go through 1 out of every 3 years. They're going to be on what we call full evaluation, and they'll be completing all of those components as well. In the 2 years, what we call off-cycle or off years, there are still things that they have to do. And for instance, on the evaluation cycle here, if you'll look down to professional learning plan, that's a component that we felt was very important to include in this. Many of you may know that frequently, and especially in past years, that many systems you had the little 1 to 5 ranking, and you had the little checklist. You check them, and you sign here, and everybody gets a 3 or 4, and we're finished. Well, we tried to put a little more, say, teeth in this. We wanted employees to understand that we value what they do, and we value how they do their job, and we wanted to help them, give them the tools that they could do that better. And one of those tools is the professional learning plan. And it's pretty simple. It actually is very reflective of the indicators on the evaluation they go through. And initially in the first year, this year will be our initial year for doing this, we're going to let them go through, and they're going to do their professional learning plan on their own. And in essence, it's going to be more like a self-evaluation for them, and then they can choose a couple of indicators that they want to try to work on and grow on, with throughout the year. Now, beginning next year, that we're a little more acclimated with the process, we're going to have administrators sit down with them and help them with that professional learning plan. They can converse together and decide together what they think the areas of growth really should be for that year. Next, one thing that they will be doing on full evaluation each year, they will be evaluated with an instrument, and the board members have a copy of that. And those categories are as I read before, and there's some more defining indicators there that the administrators will go over with them, and they'll evaluate them. I think it's unsatisfactory, satisfactory. Y'all see under one of those? I know excellence.
Excellent, competent,
And competent. And competent. So we got excellent, competent, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory are the way those will be rated. One thing that we're doing with this also, thanks to Jan, thank her for all the work on these evaluation systems. It's incredible. We're going to do this online as well. You guys have some hard copies, but as of now, those are the only hard copies that we made of this, because Jan has already created the Google Forms, and going with our Go Green as often as we can. That's going to help out here, and it's also I think will make the process. I'm not going to say easier for administrators. Evaluation is never easier, but it may help them be more organized with the process. One other thing that we're going to have included in this is a reflective conversation. That's a term that as educators we hear quite often, reflection, because we always reflect on our work and how we did, because that tells us what we need to do differently, and we want our classified employees to feel the same way. So there's going to be some reflective conversation with the administrator and the employee, and in that conversation they're going to discuss what their strengths are, what their areas of growth should be, and help them get better at what we do. So briefly, that's an overview of this. Again, I'm pretty glad it's our final component of this, and now it's not done. We do some tweaking. We tweaked some this year, and we'll do the same next year as we do surveys that let our employees tell us what they think about the process and how we can make it better. And this will be no exception. We'll be doing that next year as well. But I think we've got a good start. I think we've included enough in here that give our classified employees, just let them know that we really care about their work, and it's not just the standard checklist here. And I think that's going to help us be better all the way around. Any questions?
You say administrators, so
Yes.
just take Tyler in the high school, for example. Is Tyler the one who's going to sit down with everybody? Or?
It would be any administrator. Now, the way I envision that, and we're going to let the principal make those designations.
Okay.
For instance, and I'm not sure this is how he would do it, but for instance would be, I think David oversees custodians, is that right? So David Howard, assistant principal, would, I would think be a good choice to do that because he knows their work and understands their work and is with them on a daily basis.
Okay.
So Mike, the administrator will do the evaluation instrument, and it'll be out on a Google form. Then will the employee be able to view that and review it before the conversation begins?
They are going to, we don't have that set up. They will not be able to review that before the conversation. But the way the form is, if you'll look at your form, they'll review that and discuss that. And if there's a situation, there's a place for comments there, and there's a place for the employee to leave comments as well about their thoughts on it. If the employee says, I really think I'm good at that communication part, where you didn't think that's perfectly their right. That is something that's why that reflective conversation is so important, so they can talk those things out, and they're not just handed that form and say, sign this, and then they go off and are upset without, sharing those concerns with the administrator. And I'm sure the administrator at that point, they can probably provide them with examples that they were considering when they marked that.
Questions?
I know this is for overall improvement of everybody in the system, but is this also a tool to be used in job performance and retainage?
It can be. Here's the way that works. An evaluation is designed they're designed to help an employee.
Right.
And we don't want the negative connotation on there that, when we're talking about retaining. However, if the employee is not performing, you would think it should have been reflected in this evaluation, because we can't expect them to get better if they don't know, what they don't know.
Right.
So after the process, works its way through, I would say if an employee were not going to be retained, it would be disappointing if they had, if it was for performance reasons. Let me stress that. And this was stellar, but they were not retained for performance reasons. Then we would need to reevaluate how we do that. So, anybody else? Questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mike. All right, facilities update.
It's all done, right? Okay, great.
No headaches. Under budget, too.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I apologize. You have to listen to me again tonight. No more options, I promise. Brennan we've actually allowed him to take a little vacation for a couple of days. So you get me tonight to report on our projects. Cahaba Heights Gymnasium, we have completed that project. Kitchen roof is 100% done. There's no more physical work to be done here. We're in the process of closing out paperwork, finalized billings, getting everything closed out for the project. So that's good news. For those of you who have not seen the interior, a couple of shots here. We've had our grand opening. This has turned out to be a wonderful facility. I think the students have started to really like it and enjoy it. So hopefully this is a great first step in our process. Following the next project in line, the Classroom and Media Center, this project is underway. We broke ground June 20th. All the demolition of the old gym has been completed. We have now got the building pads in place, and they are in process of getting the underground storm sewer, the foundation systems in. We have had a little bit of delay over the last 2 weeks or so with a little bit of rain. As you can see in the photographs up here, it's a little hard to drill piers and get foundations and concrete poured when you have standing water. But with a little bit of dry weather, that project will be coming up and out of the ground, making a drastic improvement to that site. But they are working on that process currently. As we move over to East, we are in the final stages, thankfully, of the cafeteria project. We are slated for a September completion. They are working on getting the exterior glass installed. That completely will put us in the dry so that we can move on to getting the final hookups for the kitchen equipment. The permanent power is scheduled to be turned on, I believe, next week to the building. Getting all of our above ceiling inspections and everything completed so we can get the ceilings and everything in. I think, Mr. Bendall, you had asked the question last month where they were in terms of schedule and the delays we experienced.
Yes, sir.
So to give you a little bit more clear answer to that, they have a contractual schedule completion of September 21st. Right now, they have given us a recovery schedule that shows September 29th as their completion date. We have looked at the NOAA averages, and for the month of May, June, and July, they exceeded the NOAA averages. They are entitled to extension of time. However, I think the nice part is we have a good contractor that's worked well with Mark Kelly and with the school administrators and with Brennan. And instead of arguing over claims and extensions and time delays, they've actually worked the last 3 months everywhere they possibly could, and they're regaining that schedule, and I'm confident they're finishing before that September 29th date.
Good, good. Thank you.
So a little bit more progress. We're getting the exterior glass in. The brick is up on the building. The screen walls are going in. Most of the courtyard spaces have been paved and is working really well. These are actually about 2-week-old pictures at this point. Interior-wise, you can start to see how the spaces lay out. The kitchen equipment is being installed, is being hooked up at this point. So as soon as we get that permanent power on and the lights burning, it starts to close up really quick. So good news and good progress on that school. Moving over to West, our summer project for the interior renovations. This has been completed. The board office classrooms are now open and operational and underway. Our connector between the two buildings is complete. All of our interior renovations have been complete. There's a few minor punch list items, nothing that's inhibiting class at this point. And then closeout is our next immediate step for this.
Hey, Kim, has that worked all right this school year?
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, you need to come up and see it.
I think they're special.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
They are.
That's the special.
So these are some of the interior shots of the special needs spaces that we've created over the summer. These are really great improvements of where we were last year to where we are this year. So I think it's a great start to our school year this year. Now for the fun part, the kitchen cafeteria expansion at West. Long overdue, but this project has now had our pre-construction conference. Our contractor is mobilized to the site. Their job site office is up, their fences are there, and they're starting demolition. So the fun begins.
In the form of complaints is what it is.
So
We want progress, but we're going to complain along
So
the way.
let's talk about what we're looking ahead and trying to go ahead and be cognizant of. We know that there is a road shutdown that goes between where the upper parking lots are and where the pool area parking lot is. So we've been coordinating with Parks and Rec, with the city. We've coordinated with Kim and her staff. There is a plan in place. May not be the perfect plan, but there is a plan in place. Communication to parents will be going out soon. When that is going to occur, how long that is going to take, what is going to happen, when it will be back up. It actually works out well with Parks and Rec. It is scheduled to be shut down after Labor Day, so after the pool closes. It will be before baseball season starts back up, so we won't have to worry about not being able to park down near the fields, and a rerouted carpool for the temporary period of time will be already established and communicated to the parents. So it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be issues that come up during the course of construction that we can't anticipate, but we're trying to look out ahead of this and be as proactive as we possibly can.
What do they have to close it for?
There are utilities that are underneath the existing road.
But they have to reload?
That have to be relocated to accommodate the kitchen.
Okay.
And then the service access to the kitchen will come off of that, so it needs to be widened slightly to accommodate the truck radiuses as they come down that area.
Do you have a guesstimation on how long the road will be closed and the traffic will be rerouted?
Anything more than 1 day is too long.
Yeah. I don't have an exact date, but we'll make sure we have that communicated at the end of the month meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. Berry High School, we have had multiple site visits. We have gone with Tyler and with many of the other administrators working through this building. We are in the process of design. For the interior of the building, we are looking to have design complete at the end of November, submitting that to the state for approval. With the building construction starting targeted in March. Now, in order to facilitate the building construction and renovations, there's some site work and demolition that has to go on. We walked through the building with Mr. Bendall this past week, looking at the old gymnasium, some of the areas there that will be coming down, working on the secondary access road that comes in and around the site. So all of that work is in design. That work should start right after the first of the year. But that doesn't mean we're finished with the planning and coordination and working through what we've got to do to integrate the curriculum, to the building layout, to the classroom design, etc. So that's why we have had teachers, administrators, staff, everybody with us engaged in this process. Those meetings will continue. We'll be leading those as we continue forward through the design process, to make sure that academics and design are being thought about together, both in terms of the way the students will utilize and occupy the space, how the separation of the grade structure will happen, etc. The other thing that will be going on in this next couple of months is the beginning of the boundary planning discussions. So we have now finalized the contract with Cooperative Strategies. We have finalized the roadmap for how we're going to get to that, and we'll talk about that now. So this will happen in about 5 stages, the first of which is to update the enrollment projections based on this year's numbers. So that number 1 will give us new and updated information based on this year's numbers after the 20-day count is finalized. The second step of that will be the timeline to work with our planning groups to have planning units created, work sessions, material preparation, preliminary boundary changes looked at, and systems update. The third will be to then sit down with focus groups. And the focus groups would be representatives from the city, from the board, from the administration, from the schools, and likely from the PTO. So we want to make sure we have a cross-representation in those focus groups, looking at all of the factors that are being considered in this. And Scott Leopold with Cooperative Strategies will be facilitating those meetings, taking feedback, refining some of their recommendations and options. And then we move forward into step 4, which is a community forum period. At that point, they will be presenting to the public what the thoughts are on how to make this work and how these would be affecting the different areas of the city. Again, getting that feedback, making sure that it's well understood, making sure that it's an open and transparent process of how the decisions and how the recommendations are coming forward, and then moving forward with a final recommendation of boundaries with an online My School Locator application. I think that's been discussed at one point in a previous meeting, but that way anyone within our system can go in to the website, put in their address, and look and see what potentially might be changing for them and where their children will be zoned for school. So, and again, this is focused on east, west, and the 31 corridor. This does not affect Cahaba Heights and Liberty Park, just to make that clear. So just wanted to give a quick update on what's going on with boundary planning. The next piece is, as we look 2019 may look like it's a ways away, and we still have $38 million worth of construction to work off in that period of time. But that means that we need to be planning today for how that summer of 2019 is going to work. We can't think that we're going to just finish projects and all of a sudden go to school on August 1st and think that everything is going to work great. So the process actually starts with going through and putting together schedules, working and getting furniture and phasing plans, getting with the vendors, getting early purchase discounts on FF&E as we go through this process, working through kickoff meetings with the move in mind, talking with each of the schools that will be affected as part of this, talking about where teachers will start one day and end up the next day, how all of that process works. We get down to the level of looking at and scheduling box labels and deliveries for where you pack your box on Friday afternoon and where it's going to be on Monday morning. Scheduling move guidelines, move signage, on-site move management, and post-move follow-up, making sure that what was supposed to happen happened right, and if it didn't, what needs to be happening to fix and remedy that situation. I think I covered everything there. So that's where we're at. Those are the things that we're thinking about. 2019 seems a long ways away, but it'll be here before you know it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. The only other thing that I would add, thank you, is that we have had Greg, Brennan, Greg Maynor, multiple others have had discussion about how does that input carry through during the transition in the superintendent role, because I've been pretty I've injected myself quite a bit in those conversations naturally in how we have gone about just even talking with groups of teachers and focus groups about what the needs are and those kinds of things. And there is I would think, in my opinion, a very strong level of communication with HPM, within HPM, with Greg, particularly with Brennan, Vernell McDonald, which I'm not sure that you all have met him, but he's a phenomenal individual. They're bringing someone, Clark Osborne, whom I have not met. I don't believe I've met him, but he'll be joining the team as well as Rick and Sean with Lathan Associates and Tony. They've been involved and have just been a tremendous support in these discussions, but just an assurance that these discussions, there's a plan for how the discussions will even move forward. For instance, I received an email today from one of the fine arts teachers at the high school who said, I have all of these ideas. I'm nervous, about, how I'm going to communicate that, because there has been that direct line either to Tyler or to me, either way, and having these discussions. And the answer was, I'm going to connect you with Brennan Bell so that those things are communicated. Sean has made himself available as well to have those conversations with the teachers so that nothing is lost during the transition and the way that we have brought people to the table and had those conversations. So just want to share that with you.
And I don't want to leave out, Ms. Hanson has been instrumental in this process. She's been actively involved, making sure that from the middle school level that we're making sure that we're taking their needs.
Are we going to move the mural to Tyler's backyard like he asked? Mr. Hoover.
They're going to tile his Jeep.
I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
Jerry's not here. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Financial statement, please.
Okay, this will be a little quicker. The information in your packet is for the month of July. Happy to report that as of the end of July, we had received just over $35 million in revenue, local revenue. Budget for the entire year for this year was $34 million. As I mentioned earlier, we're actually $1,027,000 above what our budgeted amount was for the year. We had approximately $297,000 come in August, and the month's not over. I'm anticipating probably that much or maybe a little more to come in September. So we are on track to hopefully finish the year in very good shape. Having said that, comparison between this year and last year, local revenues are actually 2.1% above budget. Last year at this time, they were only at 99.7% of budget, so we're up approximately 3% over where we were last year. Expenditures are running a little higher. They're at 88.4% of budget. Last year they were at 81.75, but the 88.4 is partially due to the $750,000 we spent for new teacher laptops, which was not originally in the budget for this current year. Have one bit of very good news. We've been contacted by David Carrington on the Jefferson County Commission and been notified that interest money that has been accumulating from the Jefferson County 1 cent bond issue many years ago is going to be released, and we should receive about 6% of that. Hopefully it will be in the $3+ million range. We're supposed to receive those funds in September. Actually, they're taking everybody to lunch and handing checks out, so. There were no unusual.
Are they like the big checks you get from like Publishers Clerk?
I hope so. I want to trot
Along
that
with the
down
yard
to-
sign, vote for.
I want to trot it down to Wells Fargo and go here. Having said all that, there were no unusual items of revenue or expenditure for the month, and all board bank accounts have been reconciled through the end of July.
I recommend that the board approve the financial statement for July 2017. Board bank accounts have been reconciled through July 2017.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the financial statement for July 2017. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7, I recommend that the board approve the following consent items: out-of-state trips, disposal of board property, student transfers for the 2017-2018 school year, please.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the following consent items: out-of-state trips, student transfers, and disposals of property as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8A, I recommend that the board approve amendment number 1 to owner-architect agreement between Latham Associates Architects, P.C., and the board for renovations and additions to Old Berry High School in the amount of $17,750,000 as submitted, please.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve amendment number 1 to owner-architect agreement between Latham Associates Architects, P.C. and the board for renovations and additions to the Old Berry High School in the amount of $17,750,000 as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Discussion? Budget. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8B, I recommend that the board approve the amended and restated Enviro Services LLC Commercial Sewer Service Agreement and covenants and right of lien for sewer assessments as submitted.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the amended and restated Enviro Services LLC Commercial Sewer Service Agreement and covenants and right of lien for sewer assessments as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
This is work to be done out at Liberty Park. Mr. Boone, I'll let you speak to this if you don't mind, please.
We purchase our sanitary sewer services from Enviro, and it's based on the size of the buildings and the water usage. And I think that according to this amendment, our average daily use over a 30-day period will not exceed 13,792 gallons a day. So if we don't sign this contract, we don't have sewer services.
And we want sewer service.
I recommend we sign it.
David, did we have you at sewer?
You had me in sewer.
Okay.
Just like last time, you had me in sewer.
All right. Sorry. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Item 8C, I recommend that the board declare the installation of new tile in 3 bathrooms at Vestavia Hills High School to be an emergency situation and to accept the proposal by Brian's Carpet and Tile Incorporated to perform the work necessary and in consideration of $70,500 and authorize and direct the superintendent to sign a contract with Brian's Carpet and Tile Incorporated to perform the work.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board declare the installation of new tile in 3 bathrooms at Vestavia Hills High School to be an emergency situation and to accept the proposal by Brian's Carpet and Tile Incorporated to perform the work necessary and in consideration of $70,500 and authorize and direct the superintendent to sign a contract with Brian's Carpet and Tile Incorporated to perform the work. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just
Yes.
that there's additional work to be done. This is a situation in which there are some safety concerns as far as the tile coming off of the walls. We seem to have a knack as of late for discussing plumbing and such, and the need for, we need bathrooms that our students can use.
Is this
I
tile
think
been
it's an
there since,
emergency
like-
bathroom situation.
Is this happened there since I was a student or Steve was a student? It's like really old?
We didn't have
No,
tile.
it is not actually. It's actually in the newer part. Isn't this an age
Is it
thing,
really?
Tyler? I think it's in the newer part.
It's about 10 years old.
Yeah.
So.
All right, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend that the board approve the contract between Lower Brothers Company Incorporated and the board in the amount of $22,600 for resurfacing the tennis courts at Vestavia Hills High School as submitted.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the contract between Lower Brothers Company Incorporated and the board in the amount of $22,600 for resurfacing the tennis courts at Vestavia Hills High School. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. We'll talk about this.
I can. We were contacted by, I believe Park and Rec began this conversation with us. So that's a shared facility, naturally, like many others, and we are sharing the cost with them as far as the resurfacing, and it's desperately needed, and certainly something that both entities value.
So Park and Rec is kicking in something.
We're sharing the
With this?
cost. Yes, we're paying half, and they are as well. And I believe it's half.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8E, I recommend that the board approve the 2017-2018 homebound procedures and forms as submitted.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the 2017-2018 homebound procedures and forms as submitted. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Want to talk about that?
Sure. As we've revised, and you've seen and been a part of the process, we've been revising many of the policies and procedures along the way, and this is one of those that needed your approval, as this takes a student out of the regular school setting and gives them an alternate setting in which to learn. And so that's what this is. It's just an update to our processes. And again, it's been vetted by a committee of folks and making certain that we're following policy and procedures as we need to.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8F, I recommend that the board table the RFP in consideration of contract with Bruno's Marketing until a future date.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board table the RFP and consideration of contract with Bruno's Marketing until a future date. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
The only thing I would say about this is not a requirement, but because we have received quite a bit of feedback about the process and where we are with that, and with the transition in the superintendent's role, I determined that it was best that we table this and that I get your approval to do so.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I'll handle this next item of business, which is the recommendation for the interim superintendent position. I'd like to first point out that this is a consulting position. The interim will not be an employee of the system, and therefore this process is not subject to the guidelines that we'd use if we were hiring an employee. There are certain restrictions and limitations as to the amount of time an interim should serve, and should they be a retired employee of the state, on the amount of earnings they may have per year. So this will all be addressed in the contract accordingly. When we learned last month that Dr. Phillips was retiring effective September 1st, we began the process of searching for an interim superintendent. To assemble the best possible list of potential candidates, we sought the counsel of many different parties. We had discussions with the Alabama Association of State Boards, with various superintendents in surrounding systems, with other respected local educators and legal counsel. And there were many stakeholders that offered suggestions and advice as well. I'm pleased to report that what resulted was a list of 6 candidates that were all of the highest caliber. And as we began to review the experience and qualifications of these, there were naturally some that rose to the top of the list. We then pursued and interviewed 3 candidates, and having excellent results in those conversations, we determined that it was not necessary to continue the search any further. So I'd like to ask for recommendations from the board for the interim superintendent position.
I have a recommendation.
All right.
Thanks. So I would like to nominate or recommend Dr. Charles Mason as interim superintendent, and have some comments around that. Is that Dr. Mason was probably the most recommended guy that we got. A whole bunch of different people told us that we should look at Dr. Mason, and the common refrain that came after that was he's the best around. Sorry, she looked at that's what they said. And
I no longer care.
I'm kidding. And if you can get him, you should take him. So he's extremely well regarded by his peers. He was president of the Alabama Association of Superintendents from 2002 to 2003. He was superintendent of Mountain Brook City Schools for 16 years. When he was retired, he was hired by Bradfield and Gorey to be the vice president of professional development, where he did leadership training with them. So he's a Vestavia resident. He has grandchildren at Cahaba Heights, so he has a vested interest in the success of the Vestavia system. And then additionally, from all those things, he's widely regarded, considered outstanding, and so I think that we should select. But specifically, there's some things that we have going on in our school system I think would be that he is uniquely qualified for. The first would be kind of the redistricting stuff that Greg talked about earlier. Dr. Mason came from Gwinnett County in Atlanta, and it was an explosive growth area. He commented they redistricted almost every year, which I would rather have bamboo shoved under my fingernails every year than that. But he has tremendous amount of experience, with the redistricting process. 2 capital projects. His last big initiative that he had at Mountain Brook were big capital projects. They built the Board of Education building, which, for the record, carries the Charles Mason name on the front of it. They expanded Crestline. They built all that stuff over at Mountain Brook High School. So, every school is kind of touched similar to what we have going on. And a lot of the people that he worked with in that capacity there are a lot of the same people that we're working with in that capacity here. Interestingly, I think that he could offer us some perspective on kind of how to handle the 9th grade, right? Is that the alignment that we picked is very similar to what Mountain Brook has, but instead of having the 6th grade with K-5, we had 6th grade with 7, 8, and 9. So how do you handle a 9th grade that is not associated with the 10, 11, and 12, logistics and all that kind of stuff? He has experience from doing that because at Mountain Brook, obviously 9th grade is at the junior high. From a candidate selection standpoint, as we begin to look at other, a permanent superintendent, he has a lot of experience and has helped other groups and entities kind of profile what they would want in a candidate. And I think that he could offer us a lot of wisdom and guidance as to kind of how we think about that, what skills that we should consider, and be a great resource to the board as we look towards that. Another thing would be leadership development, in that we have some awesome administrators. We also have some awesome administrators that are young and extremely talented that he could pour into. And he actually said, if you ask what my greatest skill is, leadership development is that. And he would love the opportunity, as interim to develop and guide and shape and shepherd our administrators. And then the last thing I'd like to point out is that just generally familiarity. Is that he has an active working relationship. He worked with Jane Marie at Mountain Brook. He worked with Tanya when she was at Mountain Brook. He worked with Alicia when she was at Mountain Brook. So he knows some of our key people, has worked with them before, has that kind of already connection with them. So he'd be able to step in and, from a relationship standpoint, already have some positive relationships there. And then the last thing for me is, I think Warren's mentioning, it has a really calm demeanor. He's just a really wise gentleman. So a local superintendent told me, he said, if you can get Charles Mason to go to the grocery store with you, you should let him go, because you'll learn something better about how to do your grocery shopping. So, I think that he has all the characteristics that we would want. And so both with conviction and enthusiasm, I would recommend Dr. Charles Mason.
All right, we have a recommendation for Dr. Charles Mason to serve as our interim superintendent. Are there any other recommendations from the board? All right, there being no further recommendations, we'll vote on this candidate. All in favor of Dr. Mason, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, it's a unanimous vote. All right, so now the chair will entertain a motion to authorize me as president of the board in conjunction with Mr. Boone as our counsel to negotiate and execute a contract with Dr. Mason to serve as our interim superintendent.
I would like to make a motion that the board authorize Nancy and Mr. Boone to negotiate a contract with Dr. Mason to be our interim superintendent.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. I'll turn the meeting back over to Dr. Phillips to present personnel.
Item 9, I recommend that the board approve the following personnel actions: resignation, reassignment, transfer, leave of absence, and employments. Please.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the following personnel actions: resignation, reassignment, transfer, leave of absence, and employments. Do I hear a motion to approve? And second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
And then my updates, my last, just so that you are aware, the state assessment, Scantron, is indeed what is going to be used. Jane Marie and team and administrators are pulling together information right now to make certain that teachers know what they need to know as students get ready to be given their first assessment, in particular grade levels and such, in early September. And that information is forthcoming to parents as well. So training is going on, communication will be sent out, and making certain there are still some uncertainties at the state level, which of course we are not in control of, but again, we'll stay the course and get done what needs to be done, do the right thing, and communicate as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Just a little tidbit of fun today, so that you know, I'm the first person to say be careful about the stock that we put into rankings and things, but we were notified today that by niche we are ranked the #2 best school district in Alabama. So that is interesting, and you are welcome to go online and find those. They also rated us second in the best places to work. But again, a ranking is just that. Somebody has taken some qualifications that they feel are necessary for creating those rankings. What is important, and you've heard me say this many times, though, is to understand that when you're looking at those and you look at the dynamics of a school system, whether it is the size, the demographic, the free and reduced lunch that is in there, that may be included, the number of AP tests that are given, whatever that is, that what is significant about Vestavia Hills and the school system and the district that we work in and live in and the community and our students and teachers is that in spite of any elevated numbers, as Tyler presented at our last meeting, as numbers go up, as enrollment such as an AP opens up, or even as, you know, we've seen an increase in numbers already, and school buildings are being shifted and we're overcrowded, that the work is still getting done in a stellar fashion. And that's, but to be recognized for that is always a feel good, but again, being able to temper that with what the true indicators are in whatever that ranking may be. I gave you a copy. For those of you that could not, well, I gave it to everyone, but some of you were not able to attend the State of the Schools address at the Chamber. I think that was last week or the week before, whatever week that was. And so I gave you a copy. Naturally, what I would say is I only had about 30 minutes to capture the state of the schools.
So you got through 2 slides.
So there you go, zip zip. So this is not all inclusive, but I picked out the highlights to share with the community. And again, it cannot be all inclusive of everything. But the other side of that is we have not yet received our ACT collective scores, our composite scores, and those kinds of things, right, Tyler, as of today. Typically we get those earlier in August, but with all of the confusion around ACT and making certain that the information that they are publishing and sharing with school systems is accurate. I think that certainly has something to do with it. But as quickly as we get those and we can verify the accuracy of those, the annual report is just waiting to have those numbers dropped into it, and then it'll be ready to publish, which is an even better snapshot of the last school year and moving forward. So that's it for my updates, unless I've left something out that you all are curious about. Thank you for your support as we got school started. A lot going on, and we think it was a very smooth start. And so anyway, just appreciate you all being at Institute and attending that with us and supporting us as we got started.
All right, our last order of business will be to invite public comments. We ask that you please come to the podium and state your name and your address, and you limit your comments to agenda items into 3 minutes if possible. Do we have any? Kimberly?
Kimberly Cook, 4487 Galen Way. I just had a question about Liberty Park Middle School and the facilities there. I wondered if there have been any decisions made about making changes to the school, so that I know that one of the plans that's been discussed is putting 6th and 7th grade together and 8th and 9th grade together in the new plan. And just wondered if there have been any discussions about facility changes that might be required as a result of that, and whether it's been budgeted.
It's going away, isn't it, Sheila?
That's what you would hear. That's what people say.
Steve said that.
The answer to that is yes, that has been a discussion, but because it's a newer building and there is space inside, having conversations with those teachers about the way that that is utilized. But as far as making changes to it at this point, no, we're taking care of the greatest needs first, but that certainly is going to have to be a conversation over this next year as far as the transition of 9th grade is concerned. It is set up, as we have discussed in other meetings, to actually have a separate office area as well. We have talked about that in the presentations even, that we have talked about that. And so yes, that's been a discussion, but as far as cost is concerned, no, we haven't gotten down to any costs that might be incurred by making that move other than the operational costs.
All right, if that's all, ready.
All right. The Alabama Open Meetings Act allows governmental bodies like the Vestavia Hills Board of Education to meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing possible purchase of sale or real estate. I recommend that this board meet tonight in executive session for the purpose of discussing the possible purchase and or sale of real estate. I want to remind all of us as follows. Number 1, no action can be taken in an executive session. 2, there will be no vote taken in executive session. 3, no minutes of the executive session shall be made. 4, only those individuals representing the interest of this board may attend the executive session. Therefore, I'm requesting that all members of the Board of Education and Board Attorney Patrick H. Boone attend the session, as well as Greg Maynard, J. Marie Marlin, Greg Ellis with HPM, Rick Lathan, and Sean Kalma with Lathan and Associates to attend the meeting as well. I estimate that the executive session will last approximately 30 minutes. In order to convene an executive session, a majority of the members of the board present must adopt by recorded vote a motion calling for the executive session. Prior to voting to convene an executive session, the board shall receive an oral declaration from our board attorney that we can meet in executive session for this purpose. Following the executive session, we will reconvene this regular meeting. No further action will be taken prior to adjournment of this regular meeting. Following the executive session, this board will reconvene. After the meeting has been reconvened, I will make a recommendation to the board. The board will either approve the recommendation or not approve it. Mr. Boone, does my recommendation meet the requirements of the Alabama Open Meetings Act, and can we meet in executive session for the purpose and pursuant to what
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
included?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Boone, can we have a bathroom break before?
All right, do I hear a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah. My good stuff.
August board meeting is back in session.
Continental, so.
Recently, Jefferson County Board of Education Superintendent Dr. Craig Pouncey invited me to meet with him to discuss the possible sale purchase of Gresham School. I met with Dr. Pouncey on August 3rd, 2017 at his office. Attending the meeting with me were Finance Director Greg Maynard, Board Attorney Patrick H. Boone, and Greg Ellis, representative of our program manager. At the meeting, Dr. Pouncey informed the group that the Jefferson County Board of Education is willing to sell the real estate and improvements constituting the campus of Gresham School. According to a recent appraisal, the property has a market value of $6,750,000. The campus consists of approximately 27 acres plus or minus. The value of the land was established at $3 million, while the value of the improvements to it amounts to $3,750,000. At the meeting, Dr. Pouncey inquired as to whether or not the Vestavia Hills Board of Education might be interested in purchasing Gresham School at the appraised value of $6,750,000. The meeting lasted for approximately 1 hour. I informed Dr. Pouncey that only the Vestavia Hills Board of Education could decide his question. The board has just concluded an executive session authorized by Title 36-25A-7A6, Code of Alabama 1975, to discuss the consideration that the board might be willing to offer when considering purchase of real property. As you will recall, the purchase of Berry School was a 3-step process as follows. Step 1, the Hoover Board of Education as seller and the Vestavia Hills Board of Education as purchaser signed a non-binding letter of intent. Step 2, a real estate sales purchase contract was then signed by the seller and the purchaser, and Step 3, the sale was closed. My opinion is I feel that it would be an advantage to the Vestavia Hills school system to own and operate Gresham School. My recommendation, I recommend that the board direct the board attorney, Patrick H. Boone, to prepare a non-binding letter of intent as we did in the Berry purchase and authorize me to execute and deliver that letter of intent. Some specifics of that letter of intent would be as follows. A, the purchase price would be $6,750,000. B, an inspection period 60 days after the effective date of a purchase and sale contract. C, annexation of property to the City of Vestavia Hills. D, zoning of the property for use for school and recreational purposes. E, federal court approval. F, an agreement that the County Board and Vestavia Hills Board use commercially reasonable efforts to complete the negotiation and execution of a sale or purchase agreement within 30 days following the full execution of the letter of intent. And G, that the letter of intent does not constitute an offer by either party and is intended only to determine whether there is a basis acceptable to the purchaser and seller for proceeding toward a legally binding and definite sale purchase agreement for the sale and purchase of the property. Well, you don't have to read the whole thing, but you certainly need to.
You have heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board direct the board attorney, Patrick Boone, to prepare a non-binding letter of intent as we did in the Berry purchase and authorize Dr. Phillips to execute and deliver that letter of intent. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Do we have questions around that?
Yeah, all right, yes, we have discussion.
Mr. Boone, guide us in how they need to go about this discussion, please.
On your motion,
Yes.
ask any question you wish.
So why, with the superintendent transition coming up, why is now the exact right time to initiate this?
Both, well, first of all, because this has just come to us in this form at the beginning of August from Jefferson County, from Craig County. There is a timeline, not only for them and the processes that they are going through as far as building new buildings and restructuring the organization of Jefferson County schools and where students are zoned. And there is also a timeline for us. One is the design and the need for moving forward with the Berry campus. This could have implications for that if this purchase is made. And then the other piece of that is that we need time to do due diligence. If we do enter into and agree to a letter of intent, then we need time to do due diligence in order to be able to, for any of us to move forward and determine if a true sale of the property needs to occur and if a true purchase of the property needs to occur in the end. And that needs to happen no matter who is in place and needs to be determined by you all, not by the superintendent. I make the recommendation, here is the possibility, here are the options, and you all need to determine if that's something you want to consider. The other piece of this is very significant and that this would impact is the study that's going to be done by Cooperative Strategies as far as the boundary study that they are about to do. This certainly would add a different dynamic and points of conversation as they go about their study, which is about to be initiated very shortly. So the main thing is the time frame here, being able to do the due diligence, the conversations that are already going on, and the impact that the possible purchase of this property would have on all of those discussions, as well as opening up conversations about other possibilities that we have, aspired to have.
And Mr. Boone, as it relates to it's the office of the superintendent that's executing this. So if something needs to be executed after the interim superintendent is in place, does that introduce any complications between?
No.
No, because it's the office of the superintendent on our behalf doing that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Matter of fact, if this motion is approved, I will have the letter of intent up here tomorrow for Superintendent Phillips to sign. We can get it to Craig Pouncey. We're fixing to go through a holiday, get the ball rolling, and once the county board approves the letter of intent, then I will get with Greg Ellis and the interim superintendent. We will negotiate a real estate sales contract that will have to come back to this board for approval.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we need to vote again on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. There, adjourn. Ready? There being no further business to come before this board, we stand adjourned.